If you have been posting consistently with little or no engagement, then today's video is for you. Because just a few weeks ago, I was there too. I was posting and it felt like I was talking to the wall. No DMs, no comments, very few likes. And I probably shared it, a few videos ago when I was like, you know what? Who is in this with me? But then I learned something and I like to share that with you. And if you watch my previous videos, actually shared how I learned this and I was going to implement it. But now in today's video, I'm going to be sharing what has been happening so far since I started to implement that strategy. Okay. So if this is your first time, welcome. My name is Adeyinka and I help working professionals monetize their skill set so that they're able to build a six-figure business without having to quit their jobs. And I am documenting my entire journey. I've built out my 8-week roadmap leading until when I land my very first client. And I am in week 3 of my journey. And ever since I started to post, I've been, a bit frustrated just because it's been very little interactions, little or no engagements, I must say, no DMs, no comments. And I was like, what's going on? Okay. And so I believe probably like a few videos ago, maybe last week or something like that, I was like, you know what? I am going to be trying something differently, right? Because I kind of did a bit of research and I found out that, most of my content was really focused on sharing tips and strategies with my audience, right? And this audience is really new. They don't really know me, so they don't really care as much. And so this unknown person telling us, what to do, sharing tips and strategies, why should I trust you, right? And so I was like, you know what? I've got to change my approach. I've got to do something quite different. And I noticed that even other content that I kind of interact with, it feels like I know them. And I noticed that it's not necessarily because they're sharing tips and strategies, it's how they share it. They kind of invite you into their world with real stories that makes you feel like you know them and they're more relatable, right? So they welcome you into their world by sharing behind the scenes or their personal stories. And so I decided to try out this strategy. And boy, oh boy, it worked because the first video that was more relatable and it was more of a personal story based on my business experience and some of the failures that I've experienced in business, people related so well with it. And I received about 5 DMs, which was new, okay? It was new. And everywhere that I posted that content, I actually saw more interactions and I saw more engagement on that post. And so I was like, you know what? This is the way to go because I could see people asking real questions, right? Because then it was more like, okay, that's what you're going through. That's what you went through. How did you solve it? How can I solve mine? And so rather than sharing tips and strategies, we've got to share personal stories. Now, something else I like to say is when it comes to sharing personal stories, sometimes we get really scared because I was also worried, right? I feel like sometimes when we've gone through certain things in life, we're very careful in terms of how we want to share it, especially when they're not like success stories. We're very careful because we don't want to be judged, right? You can imagine you're into business, you've made certain mistakes. Those mistakes have cost you a lot. Sometimes you could feel like, hey, sharing these mistakes will make you feel like you don't know what you're doing. But in reality, I noticed that that's not the case. That when we think that way, we're doing ourselves a disservice, thinking that, oh, it's going to make me feel like I'm clueless, it's going to feel less of myself. But no, it actually makes you more relatable because people don't just want to know that you have the solution to their problems. People want to know that you were actually in that same problem. And through that problem, you found the solution, you did something about it. That's the result you got. And now you're sharing that result. That's the difference. So it's different from, okay, you know what? Do this strategy is going to work for you. The person listening is like, how do I know it's going to work for me? How do I know you're not just reading from a book? How do I know that you're not sharing someone else's experience? I'd rather want to talk to someone who's been there and done that, right? And so when you come and share and you're vulnerable with your audience to say, hey, I went through this and oh my goodness, it didn't work that way. And in my own case, I was sharing how, you know, I was making sales in a month. And at the end of the month, my account was red. Oh my goodness, so many people could relate to it because apparently that has happened to so many small business owners. So they felt like they are not alone. So, okay, now that you've been through it, what did you do? And so then I shared my strategy in terms of like what I started to do differently that kind of pulled me out of that mess. And I noticed that sharing from that perspective was really a game changer. And so I want to encourage you to not be too hard on yourself. Don't be scared. Don't be worried. I mean, you could still filter what you want to say if you're not ready, but just know that you've got to go a bit personal because that's what people can relate with. And that's the easiest way for you to build trust and actually become more visible. And I can relate with you in terms of like, you feeling very vulnerable because I also felt that way. I'm not used to speaking, like going into details of my business and my struggles. I just feel like, you know what? Let me deal with it myself, right? Because who cares, right? Let me just come show you the solution. But in reality, they care. They care about that problem. They care about what you went through. They care about how you came out of it. And then they care about that solution. So we have got to get a bit personal as we're monetizing our skill set, sharing our content, being consistent. We've got to be more relatable because that's the easiest way to build trust. And once you build trust, it's easier for you to be more visible. And so that all our efforts of being consistent does not go to waste, right? Now, it's not like I have a zillion followers, or it's not like I have 1,000 likes or 1,000 views even on the post, but it's better than where I was just a few weeks ago. And I am someone who's very big on data. I'm someone who's very big on tracking because it's very important to know how you are doing so that you know what to do differently. You're able to know what is working, what is not working. I'm an agile coach, I'm a business owner. Like, tracking is second nature to me. And so every increase in something, I'm trying to figure out what created that increase. How can we maintain that increase? What can we do about it? And I have noticed that ever since I started to implement this strategy of getting a bit more relatable, a bit, sharing more personal stories, it's been a game changer to my content creation game. And that's what I intend to keep doing going forward. So please make sure that you employ those tactics to your own strategy so that you can also start to see changes in your engagements. Now, one of the things you might probably be figuring out is, how do I share my story, right? Because that's the same question I had. Okay, so what story do I share? Because there's so many parts to me. I have multiple businesses. What business do I actually want to share? What part of the business do I want to share? And so it was a bit of a struggle trying to even figure out, like, okay, how do I even share my story? And so an easy place for you to start from, because that's where I started from, was share some of your struggles, right? When you think about a struggle that you faced and how you overcame that struggle, I think it's one of the easiest ways for you to be able to create content around, because it's easy for people to be able to relate to that same struggle, right? And so you can jot down a few struggles that you faced with whatever, skill set you're trying to monetize. What did you do about that struggle and how did you overcome it, right? For example, let's kind of use my own skill set as, an example here. So my skill that I'm monetizing is my business knowledge, right? I have multiple businesses. I've been running that for a while. I live in a different country. My business is in a different country. And so my goal is to help small business owners build structured, scalable businesses that can run without them, so that they're able to earn more, work less, and live the life that they desire, enjoy freedom, and be able to just, explore life, right? And so when I think about that goal, right, I want to help small business owners build structure scalable business, because that's what I was able to do for myself, right? But in order for me to be able to get there, what were the mistakes that I did? What were the failures that I faced? What were the struggles I had to deal with to get there? Because I didn't just get there overnight, right? So when I start to think from that perspective, I was able to then create content that felt more relatable, because then I had to share my own experience. So when we bring it back to your own situation, think about your goal, which we already kind of went through in, a couple of videos ago. But if this is your first time, there are lots of videos they can catch up on, that we've gone through all of that, how we created our offer, how we build all of that so that way we then know what to focus on. So you can always catch up on that, on my channel. But then once you look at what your goal is and what your offer is, remember this is something you've done, you've accomplished for yourself. But how did you get there? What were the struggles you faced? What were the challenges? How was life? What was your mental health like? What was all of those things? And what was your journey to getting there? All of that could be content that you can start to share with your audience. Now, your goal is to help them do XYZ, right? Because you've done that for yourself. But all of the struggles that you face getting you there is what people really want to know, because that is what will then make them know that, hey, this person is going through similar struggles that I'm going through. So if she's done it for herself, I feel more comfortable to go with her, because at the end of the day, we are not just trying to create content. We're trying to monetize our skill set. So at the end of the day, we want people who know for certain that we can help them solve their problem. And they can only know for certain when they trust us, and they can only trust us when they feel like they know us. And that is basically through the content that we share, through the stories that we share, right? So you see how it begins to make sense? Okay, so don't stress yourself too much thinking about, okay, what story do I share and how do I share that story? Just start from your struggles and what you did to get over the struggles, and that will be a perfect start for you. So if you have been hiding your story like me, this is the time to tell it, because these tips will not help you, but your personal stories will help you break through, and it will help you build the trust that you need for your business. So if you are ready to start building trust with your audience, I want you to drop trust in the comments. Let me know that you are ready so that I can share more tips with you in the comment section. Thank you very much for spending another time with me today. I love you as usual. It's always a great time spending time sharing real authentic truth with you guys, so you see how things are working. And I'm hoping that these videos are motivating you and pushing you on a day-to-day basis to keep going, because I ain't giving up, so you have no reason to give up. I will see you in my next video. Bye.